In this video, I'm going to show you how to install CentOS 8.2 so that you can, following on, install Plex Media Server. So the first thing you need to do is go to centos.org, and then once you're at their site, you'll click on download. For most people, you'll want x86-64, and then just select a mirror that you think is closest to you. I recommend downloading the CentOS 8.2 minimum. First of all, the ISO will be smaller. However, if you want to install the GUI or the graphical desktop, then I recommend downloading the full ISO, which will be this one here. In my case, I've already downloaded the minimum install, so that's how I will be installing my version of CentOS. So I'm going to go ahead and create a VM, and I'm going to call it Cento. And I'm going to select the CentOS minimum install CD or ISO. And then I'm going to give it 4 cores with 1 socket. I will give it 4 gigs of RAM. If you have more, that's great. And then I will make it a little bit bigger than this. Obviously, the more space you have, the better. Depending on how you're going to set it up, I recommend an external drive for your actual media. In this case, I'm just going to do the CentOS install for the actual server itself. And then we'll wait for the VM to be created. And then here's the VM. And I'm going to go ahead and use just the CentOS install. I've already checked the media, so I know the media is good, so I'm comfortable with using that. And if you're wondering what I'm using here, this is XCP-ng, which is very similar to Zen Server. It's basically a redistribution of Zen Server for the most part. And then we'll wait for it to boot. Alright, so then here I'm going to select English because that's my native language. And I'll click continue. And then for the destination source, drive, I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to do a custom partition setup. So then I'm also going to do standard partition. The first partition I'm going to make will be swap. And I'm going to make that 4 gigs so that it matches the size of my RAM. And then the next thing I will do is make the boot. I'm going to make that 1 gigabyte. And then I'm going to make the root partition. I'm making the root partition 1 GB, or the mount point, sorry. And I recommend that at the very minimum that you make it 1 gig, just because you have room for future software that you may install and whatnot, and updates. And then I'm going to add the home directory, or home mount point, sorry. And I'm going to make that 13. And depending on how you plan on installing, or where you plan on putting your media, whether it be movies or MP3s or pictures, I recommend making the home directory bigger if that's where you plan on putting them. However, if you're going to put them elsewhere, such as a NAS storage or a second drive, then I definitely recommend those two options versus storing it in your home directory. But if you only have one drive, then you can certainly make that work. And then the last thing I'm going to add is the var. And I recommend making this a minimum of 12 gigabytes, just because the Plex media server puts its metadata and screen previews, and if you use offline sync, is also one of the directories that will exist underneath the var directory is where that's going to go. So if you can, make the var directory at the minimum 12 gigs, otherwise you may find yourself running out of space. And then now it's done, so I'm going to click done. I will click accept changes. And then I'm also going to, whoops, I didn't mean to click on that. Click on software selection, and I'm going to do the base install or minimum install, just because I don't want a lot of extra packages, so that's what I will select. However, if you want more packages, by all means choose to do so. Then I will select the time zone. I'm in Central Time, so, and then we'll enable the network. And then down here you can set a host name. I'll call it Plex, I guess. I'll call it Plex 2. Click apply, and then done. And then that should do it. And then I'll click begin install. I'll set a root password. You don't have to create a user. I like to create a user. And then this should go a lot faster versus using a full installer with the standard GUI. So with that, we'll wait for this install, and we'll be back shortly. And our install is done. So we're going to reboot it, and we'll wait for it to start up. And while we wait, that's pretty much all there is to this, to installing it and setting it up. In our next video, I'll show you how to install Plex Media Server, and we'll also configure some other things. One thing I did forget to mention when I enabled the network interface, we could have also assigned a IP at that time. Since I did enable the network, at the very least you'll get an IP, maybe most likely dynamic, because we just enabled the interface without configuring an IP. So that's for all. Thanks for watching.